Agitprop is a term that came out of the Russian Revolution, marrying agitation and propaganda to describe art practices intended to ignite social change. Now, a century later, the Brooklyn Museum has a new exhibit called Agitprop, which opened last week and runs through summer of 2016. The exhibit includes photography and film, prints, street banners, protest songs, TV shows, and conversations and live performances.
Brooklyn's own Dred Scott is one of the many artists taking part, who, by the way, will all have a voice in which additional works are added during 2 more phases coming up in February and April, so the artists are also acting as curators. Mr. Scott uses a number of media to, as he puts it, make revolutionary art to propel history forward. And he joins us now to tell us about this current exhibit. Dred Scott, welcome back to BK Live. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
Of course.
So it's going to go through December or through the summer of 2016.
August 2017.
So this
2016.
is going to be an evolving work. It's not a staid old stuffy museum thing.
Yeah. Well, you know, the world changes, and they wanted to try and keep up with it a bit. And the first phase is mostly got a little older artists, but then it's, we recommended some of the people we thought were really cool, and they're going to be adding that in, I think, February and then again in May, and it's going to be up through August. And it's, trying to encompass a lot of the, changes and transformation and upheaval that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
So what is the overall sense of the exhibit? Like, what is the art that is involved, and who are these artists?
Well, the artists, I mean, they come from all over the world. They're mostly U.S. based, but they're from all over the world. In the first phase, it's got people like, me and Yoko Ono and Oda Benga Jones, who's a really great artist collective from down in Houston. It's got Ganzir, who's an Egyptian artist who lives in the U.S. now, but he came known to the world through his work around the Egyptian uprising that happened in 2011. Mm-hmm. It's a very powerful show, talking about a lot of things that are going on. It's got people from China, and it was assembled by the curators to look at what have been some of the cutting edge practices. It's got Grand Fury, who did a lot of work around AIDS and making queer actually visible, and so. This is a show that if you are paying any attention to what's going on in the planet and care about humanity, this is a show you should check out. And it's got some of the key people who've been, for decades now, actually been making work that actually speaks to the deepest concerns of humanity.
So we're sitting here now in 2015, you're running through 2016. Social media has sort of flattened that whole landscape. Like, something can't happen in China without me hearing about it in Brooklyn a few hours later. So how's that reflected? And even to take that a step further, how's that changed the nature of what Agitprop is?
First off, Agitprop. Agitprop. But
thank you.
It's all right. But no, I mean, well, first off, there's plenty that happens. I mean, even like a block away that we don't know of. I mean, it's like social media does make a lot of stuff visible, and you see that, with recent. It's like the cops have been killing black folk for decades in this country, but now there's actually a visible movement against it because people are able to tweet about it, put it on Facebook. The cell phone videos that have gotten out have been actually able to be shared. It's not as if news media was going to cover this, except for the fact that people on the streets were putting it up on, posting this stuff. Mm-hmm. So that has actually changed awareness on some issues that have happened. And if you take Ganzir, for example, he, one of the times when he was arrested in Egypt, he's tweeting to his, hundreds of thousands of followers, just been arrested, come down to the jail. And that, may have saved his life, actually. Yeah. And so social media does actually activate people, and it makes people internationally know about these artists who are doing incredible work on the streets, who was like in the midst of this upheaval. He's just out painting on walls and actually talking about people that have been martyred, talking about people that have been disappeared, talking about people that have been tortured. And so the social media does actually make the work accessible internationally. But the key thing is that, what's going on in the world and how are artists responding to it? I mean, it's like, some of the work that I've been making, recently has been a bit of a product of some of the upheaval around that's caused in social media, but I've been doing this long before Facebook and Twitter existed, and I'm still going to be doing it. And I think that, there's some ways in which, saying it's a fad would be absolutely naive, but I think that it augments what people are talking about as opposed to replaces it.
Talking to the great Brooklyn artist Dred Scott, thank you very much for being here. How is your own work fused into the theme of this exhibit?
Well, the work that I have is a project called On the Impossibility of Freedom in a Country Founded on Slavery and Genocide. And it sort of draws as its historic reference the 1963 fire hosing of civil rights demonstrators in Birmingham, Alabama. And these were people that came out to, sort of end Jim Crow segregation, but also the brutality that was Jim Crow segregation. And in looking at some of these historic photos, a lot of times we look at them when we see the brutality and the violence that's embodied in them. But one of the things I started to see is like, these are images of people's tremendous courage and vitality fighting for oppression, including that, could actually lead to death. I mean, lynching was part of Jim Crow segregation. Right. And so I wanted to make work that both honored that the civil rights, resistance and the courage of people. And so doing it, I actually worked with firemen and had them turn a high pressure water hose on me, and I did a durational performance that I walked into the battering jet of the fire hose. Yeah. And as part of it, I sometimes did like the hands up, don't shoot gesture, because it was done in October of last year. And it was right around, that was the time period where people were thinking about Mike Brown and the demonstrations and Black Lives Matter. And so I was making work that was actually responding to all of this. Mm-hmm. And that's the key work that I have in the show is still photographs from that performance.
So what the hell does that feel like to have a fire, like just to keep it 100, like really, what? So, because we see those videos and like grown men rolling down the street from the force of a fire hose gone full blast, but what does it physically entail?
First off, the firemen do have some control over the pressure, and so I worked with them so that I would not actually get maimed or killed, and I'm pretty sure that's not a concern that Bull Connor had.
Given to civil rights leaders.
But it was not a pleasant experience. Yeah. It's not something that it's like when you see the civil rights demonstrators fleeing from this water hose. Yeah, that's what the sane response is. But since I was doing this performance, I was like, no, I have to endure this, and it hurt. It wasn't. It was more. The thing that was interesting is, we did it in October. Mm-hmm. It was lucky. It was a warm day. It was about 70 degrees, but the water was about 68 degrees. So it was really cold, actually. Yeah. You're standing out in wet clothes at 68 degrees. It's cold, and then there's the pressure. It's battering on you, and it's actually, it doesn't, I was expecting it to hurt more than it did, and it more was like tiring, and the next day I was sore, but it wasn't in pain. So just on the physical level, yes, it was a trial. It was an ordeal. But it's also something that I knew if the civil rights demonstrators could withstand that I could too.
What do you hope folks will take away after experiencing all these works?
Well, I hope that people use this as a platform to change the world. A lot of this work, much of it's historic at this point, or some of it's historic at this point, and it's in the Sackler Center, which has a famous Judy Chicago project called the Dinner Party.
Feminist art.
It's really important work, and so and it's got some historic work too, from the work of the NAACP anti-lynching campaign, where they would hang out a sign that said a man was lynched yesterday, to early Soviet work that was actually even they've got films about early Soviet abortions, which was it was the first country to legalize abortion. And so I hope people look at this and see both this past and see like some shoulders to stand on, but also look and reflect and for the artists coming, make art in this tradition and take strength from the fact that there are these sort of older artists that have done this, but also look at the present. There's a lot of vibrancy. There's a lot of really interesting, powerful work out there, and I'm very happy that this show exists. I hope other museums and galleries start to do that, and I hope people who wouldn't necessarily come to a museum thinking, well, there's not much here for me, they come and say, oh yeah, wow, at the midst of Black Lives Matter, here's an artist that's actually, drawing on this civil rights demonstration. There's, people that are talking about the Breakfast for Children program that the Black Panther Party set up. There's people talking about it, the Egyptian Revolution. There are people talking about abortion, which, you think, well, that would have been a settled question. It's like, my God, right now there's lunatics walking into abortion clinics, shooting up people. This patriarchal, misogynist, woman-hating program that's been put out from the highest levels of the land. You got politicians that are, talking about all this racist xenophobia. I hope people come and look at this show and actually go out and get out in the streets, but also make work and change the world. The world is a nightmare for the great majority of humanity, and these are artists who are looking soberly at that and actually standing with the people to change it.
Well, we're going to get out to the Brooklyn Museum. You've got until August of 2016, but go now.
Yeah.
Go a few months later, see how it evolves. Dred Scott, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
See you at the museum.
Cool.